Something in this episode got spoiled for me and I don't want that happening to you, so spoiler alert. Episode 8, ladies and gentlemen. We're all over the place and this one is a doozy. Right off the bat, we get this.
The bad news is our water chips have a 30% fail rate. The good news is we'll know which ones fail before installation.
Alrighty then. This means two things. Number one, someone at Vault-Tec also thought that Bud's Super Manager Vault was a ridiculous idea and went out of their way to screw him over. And number two, well...
Vault 13 was a special case. It was supposed to remain closed until the subjects were needed. Vault 13 was, in scientific parlance, a control group.
But they all would have died if my ancestors didn't get them a replacement water chip. That doesn't seem to fit in with your plans.
An unfortunate and unforeseen accident. However, as it turns out, a rather fortuitous one.
So the lore now states the Vault-Tec knew ahead of time that Vault 13's water chip was going to fail. But the president of the Enclave, Dick Richardson, aka Dick Dixon, still claims that Vault 13 was a control vault, like Vault 8. But what we also found out in Fallout 2 is that Vault 8 received hundreds of replacement water chips that were intended to be delivered to Vault 13. Vault 13 in turn received what was supposed to be Vault 8's second Garden of Eden creation kit, the GEC for short. Now I've seen it being suggested that President Dick Dixon is lying and that Vault 13 was not a control vault but another test. However, at this point in the conversation, Dixon has no idea who you are or where you're from. He really has no reason to lie. Furthermore, if the failing water chip was indeed intentional, then why would Vault-Tec ever bother to try and send a shipment of replacement water chips to Vault 13 at all? They would just install it and call it a day. Also, Vault 13 was also issued GECs, which further indicates that it's a control vault. However, the Fallout Bible states the Vault 13 was to remain closed for 200 years, as a study of prolonged isolation. While he doesn't say that it's for prolonged isolation, President Dick goes on to say the following about Vault 13.
As it turns out, we needed test subjects from untainted pre-war human stock, your ancestors in Vault 13, and some freshly mutated stock, the villagers from Arroyo.
So the Vault 13 dwellers who left the vault and established Arroyo was an accident that worked out for them. But the TV show is saying that it was not an accident. The Enclave has all the information that Vault-Tec had. Can this be explained away as President Dixon being somehow wrong? Or is this a cut and dry lore inconsistency introduced by the TV show?
Robco presents The Automated Man.
So I guess what I said in the last video is getting updated. Robco did produce the control chip, which makes me wonder, the scene in episode 1 of the real house experimenting with it, did that happen before or after this scene at Vault-Tec? Because if it's after, then that means that the house still has access to it, despite selling it to Vault-Tec. In which case, it would have been a very useful thing to have during the events of New Vegas. If it was before, then I would still wonder why he wouldn't at least hold on to the schematics for future production. Then again, you can argue that House is someone who honors his contracts.
As for the White Glove Society, I'm afraid I'm contractually obligated not to reveal their original name.
Ron Perlman gave an interview recently where he spoke about Fallout. He prominently said that for the first game, he was paid $40 in a sandwich. Well, I guess now we know why he went into it. Because he's back in Fallout, ladies and gentlemen. He is playing what appears to be an unknown super mutant, a first-generation super mutant created by the Master and intelligent. Even though we don't know what happened to Jacobstown, some could use this as an indication that the Jacobstown ending they went with is either the one where Marcus dies, or the courier never completed or failed the quest, Guess Who I Saw Today. I'm going with the latter because it fits with my determination that the showrunners are playing with a world where the courier never existed, or died at Goodsprings when Benny shot him. So Ron Mutant drags Cooper to what appears to be a church. I thought at first that it could be the church in Searchlight. It's saturated in radiation, so it'd be a good place for someone immune to radiation to live. But this church is made of brick and mortar, while the Searchlight church is made of wood. Regardless, Ron Mutant hoists Cooper upright and sticks a piping hot piece of uranium ore into Cooper's stomach hole, and seemingly leaves it there. This shouldn't do anything to prevent him from going feral. Ron Mutant took Cooper along with his satchel and I guess gave him a vial. The uranium being inside him should allow him to quickly regenerate injuries on the fly, which is why they made it a point to show him healing in episode 1. Now, I'm not a nuclear physicist, but I do know some things. If we assume that it's natural uranium ore, aka uranium-238, that means that it's completely safe for anyone standing next to Cooper. because it has a very long half-life in the billions of years, which means low radioactive energy output, and that energy is alpha radiation, which doesn't penetrate skin. The bottom line is that Cooper is getting quite the level up. I don't think it necessarily means this, but I hope it doesn't mean that there's now a possibility that Cooper turns into a glowing one, like Jason Bright.
You're just a very replaceable part in this machine.
Man, this can really throw a wrench in a different video I've been working on. It seems like everybody in the Enclave got a cryo chamber. Well, except for the people on the oil rig, I guess.
She used to cook people for the Legion.
She used to burn people alive or dead for the Legion? I hope so, because the Legion are a lot of things, but they're not cannibals.
Fuck. Hey!
Anyway, shorter video this week. This was more of a setup episode. I was wrong about things ramping up more after last week's episode. Let me know in the comments if you can figure out a way to square the water chip aspect of things. Or do you think that the showrunners genuinely just made a mistake? Either way, we got 2 episodes left. See you next week.